President Obama's proposed $1.267 trillion budget deficit will be the subject of much haranguing and scrutiny in the coming months. Opponents will assail the shortfall as a giant step toward the economic destruction of the Union and will use it as a fiscal call to arms as the November midterm elections draw nigh. But who really understands the budget? A trillion is a huge number to grasp. Journalists, it seems, have a hard time comprehending it, which explains why few news stories put the budget deficit in terms the rest of us can easily appreciate. Any good reporting of a budget, whether it comes out of Washington, your state house, or your school board, should always include the basic information: revenues and expenditures. How much does the entity expect to take in, and how much does it expect to spend? Financial reporters understand this because most of them have business degrees or some backgrounds in accounting. I've tried unsuccessfully for more than 20 years to convince heads of university journalism programs to require their graduates to take 1 or 2 accounting courses. Here's why. Most J-School graduates will cover local government for small-town news organizations. Passage of the annual budget will be one of the bigger stories of the year. And the budget is a fertile source for enterprising journalists in search of waste, fraud, and abuse stories. But you have to know a credit from a debit, an asset from a liability, revenues from expenses. Journalism department heads come up with the same academic excuse for not requiring their students to acquire the financial tools needed for good basic reporting. Accounting courses, they say, are in the business school. End of discussion. Well, guess what? Business schools now require writing courses. The Houston Chronicle devoted about 30 column inches, including a graphic, on the proposed budget, but omitted revenues and expenses, which the budget lists as receipts and outlays. I mean, come on. The federal budget is not baseball where you can get away with reporting just a player's batting average. A truer picture requires knowing total hits and at-bats. A player may retire with a batting average of .500, which sounds impressive, until you learn he had 1 single from 2 times at bat. The 192-page federal budget is best explained for us regular folks in terms of a household budget. What is our income this week? What are our expenses? What is left over? The proposed budget estimates receipts of $2.567 trillion and outlays of $3.834 trillion. Subtract outlays from receipts, and there's your $1.267 trillion deficit. You may understand trillions, but I understand hundreds. A proportional reduction brings the budget story closer to home. Say you expect to bank $493 in cash money each week, and you plan to spend $737. Well, you'd be in the hole $244 by the weekend because you overspent your income by about 50%. Where do you cut back? Unlike the government, you can't print money, and no bank will give you a loan because of your fiscal irresponsibility. So, you decide not to eat at restaurants and to forego that flat-screen TV. Those are discretionary expenses, unlike your rent or mortgage, utilities, car payments, and other legally binding financial obligations, also known as mandatory expenses. The federal government also has mandatory and discretionary spending. Mandatory programs such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, TARP, and others account for around 57% of the total outlays, or $2.165 trillion in the proposed budget. The reality of that figure hits home when it's compared to income. Mandatory programs take 85 cents of every dollar going to Washington. See what we've just done? We've converted trillions of dollars to pennies, a much easier amount to understand. Using pennies, we see the federal government has only 15 cents left out of every income dollar to fund agriculture, defense, interior, homeland security, NASA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Small Business Administration, and the rest of the government agencies and programs. But the government needs 65 cents to fund all of its discretionary outlays. That's why it goes into debt by 50 cents for every dollar it takes in, which comes to $1.267 trillion. So that's the budget. But just how much is $1 trillion? Well, it's $1 million. And if you placed $1 bills end to end, the chain would go up to the moon and back 200 times. Something NASA won't be doing even once under the Obama budget. I'm John David Powell.